Hello, friends. Tattooed Biker here with you, and welcome back to Mysterious Mondays. Tonight, I've got 5 true stories or reports of encounters with black-eyed kids. Now, I don't know if they're cryptids, aliens, or supernatural beings, but whatever they sure are creepy. So gear up, and let's ride. Number 1. Dear Biker, I have a story that I wanted to share. You see, I grew up as a latchkey kid. My parents didn't arrive home till after 5 p.m., and so one day after school, when I was in my early teens, I was sitting at the dining room table, doing my homework, when I hear a very firm knock at the door, like the kind that cops do. Our elderly neighbor knocked like that when he wanted to come over for whatever reason, so I got up to answer. I opened the door to reveal what appeared to be an 8-year-old boy with sandy blonde hair looking straight down. He was wearing a yellowish but sullied shirt under a gray zip-up hoodie, which was also dirty as well. It was late spring in the South, and I knew most nearly all the kids our age in the neighborhood and from our school, but I didn't recognize him at all. Not relegating myself as the pinnacle of knowing everyone, I thought maybe he was a friend, one of my neighborhood friends' little brother or something like that. So I said, "Hi, can I help you?" And with a very assertive tone, he said, "Let me in. I need something to eat." Baffled by this kid's gall, I said, "Do I know you?" When this time, he barked the same thing with a little more gusto, but in a completely flat tone. Something was very, very strange about this kid. I asked if I needed to call his mom or anything, and I got the same answer. So then I asked if he was friends of so-and-so. No response. I tried to make a little more small talk with him, chummily tapping him on the shoulder. Surprisingly, he was literally as hard as steel. The whole time, his gaze was fixed downward, so I leaned in to get a look at his eyes. His eyes were freaking black, a deep black. I asked him if he had been in a fight, but no answer. By this time, my alert sensors were up and running, thinking maybe domestic abuse by his seemingly sullen and brash attitude. I started to get some crackers, and on the way, an alarm went off in my head, and I thought, why is his entire orbital area the same color as his eye? After grabbing the crackers and turning to further question him, in mid-sentence I looked again at the doorway, and he was gone. But then I started to hear the kid's voice in my head. It was like he was asking someone, why didn't it work? It didn't work. I just brushed it off as a weird experience. Fast forward several years later, I was 25 and bored as hell one night, so I decided to read about this black-eyed kid phenomena. Then the memory hit me like a hammer. I was completely freaked out. Luckily, I had told this to a friend when it happened, and he does remember me telling this story, and I thought your listeners might enjoy it too. Thanks for reading this. Signed, Dennis. Number 2. Hey TB, I still have chills just thinking about this. My encounter doesn't match 100% to others I've heard, but I'm positive it has something to do with these black-eyed kids. So this was around April 2019. I live in a decent-sized city in the western U.S. My job at the time was in a restaurant where I worked late nights, sometimes up until 1 a.m. The job wasn't far from my apartment, so I would walk back every night. My place was in kind of a run-down part of town. Imagine a lot of abandoned lots. Basically, at the time of night, there would be no one around except people like me making their way home from work. So I'm walking down the road leading up to my place one night. I'm looking down at my phone when I lift my head up and I see these 2 kids, maybe 40 to 50 feet away, holding hands and walking in my direction. This was odd because the road is pretty straight shot and there wouldn't have been many alleys or side streets for them to come out of, unless they were just hanging out in one of the empty lots. They were too far away to make out detail, but I was pretty sure they had to be young kids. That on its own was unsettling, but the way they started behaving after this was what sent me into caution mode. These two stepped off the curb, looked both ways, and crossed the street. There was no need to do that on a completely deserted road, but I thought, whatever, kids are taught to look both ways before crossing. That would have been fine, except that after walking maybe 10 more feet, they stepped off again, looked both ways, and crossed back, over to the side they were just on. They did this maybe 4 or 5 times until they were right in front of me. I could tell at this point it was a boy about 13 and a girl around 9. Their clothing wasn't exactly like other BEK accounts I've heard, where they're wearing old-timey rags. Instead, they just had these gray, pajama-looking things on, and white shoes with no logo or branding. Now, I'm a big dude. I'm about 6'1", 240 pounds. I've been stopped and screwed around with by all kinds of junkies and weirdos, and always thought that I could handle myself. Despite that, I was completely terrified of these 2 little kids. They came up to me, and that's when I noticed that their eyes were solid black. They were so very dark, they almost seemed to have some kind of black glow to them. They stopped dead in front of me, and the boy said, "We're lost. Our parents must be worried," in this straight, monotone voice. You'd think that 2 lost children in the ghetto at 1 a.m. would be frantic and crying. The girl then chimes in, "We need to use the phone at your house. Our parents must be worried." She talked in the same flat, matter-of-fact way. I told them they could use my cell phone or I could call the police. They didn't say anything, and the boy just said again, "Our parents are worried." In no other situation would I leave 2 kids there, defenseless, but something in my gut just told me to get the hell out of there. So I quickly walked past them, and I did. But to be honest, I just can't put this experience behind me. Thanks for letting me share. Signed, Albert. Number 3. Hey TB. First of all, some backstory. My mom and I are both firm believers in all things paranormal. We know the stories of black-eyed children very well. 2 kids with no emotion and black, shadowy faces, asking to come inside to use the phone, grab something to eat, or even to ask you for just simple help, but if you help, bad things would happen. We are believers, but of course, we never thought either of us would actually encounter something like this. On a Friday night, my mom got home late from work, and there was a meeting about her work staying open during quarantine, so she didn't get to our house until around 7:30 or so. After pulling up in front of our house, she noticed a kid walking down our street. Now, my neighborhood doesn't really have younger kids at all, mainly just us teenagers, so my mom found this kid kind of strange. She even says to my dad, who's on the phone with her, and he jokes about the kid jumping on her car and scaring her. You know, just a typical dad trying to be funny. Then, just as fast as he was in front of her and moving to her, he was gone down the road and around the corner. 20 minutes go by before my mom hangs up the phone and steps out of the car. Then from behind her, she hears a childlike, "Excuse me." After dropping her purse and screaming, she looks at the kid, who she notices is the same boy who had disappeared around the corner almost half an hour before. Immediately, she told us that she had this overwhelming feeling of pure fear through her entire body. She stares this boy down and notes that she can't see his face at all because of his hood and the shadows from the street lamp behind him. And he has on no shoes. It's 8 p.m. on a Friday night, and after a stay-at-home order was just put out, there was a little boy running around barefoot in just shorts and a hoodie. It was like he was trying to dress like a regular person, but somehow just barely missed the mark. The boy, with his head down, asked my mom if she had seen another little boy, and that he couldn't find him anywhere, meaning that he was one of a pair. My mom, who has 3 kids and is one of the most genuinely kind people I know, had no urge whatsoever to help this child in front of her, or had any kind of sympathy for his situation. She just felt wrong, like there was something off and she needed to leave. In her head, her only thought was that she needed to run up our porch steps and get inside. However, what came out of her mouth was completely different. She tells the little boy, "No, I haven't, honey. Where did you lose him? I can help you look." Every part of her was telling her to leave, and that this was wrong, but she offered to help. It's like the children knew. She thought something was off, though, because right at that second, another boy in the distance screamed. Of course, my mom jumped and her fear spiked, but the boy was eerily still calm. He looked at her, and she suddenly noticed the black eyes. Then, in a monotone voice, the boy said, "Oh, there he is," turned in the opposite direction and ran up our street, then turned left and was gone. That's the story. I hope you and your listeners find this as interesting as I did. Thanks. Signed, Hannah. Number 4. Hey TB, this happened to me and my wife 3 years ago around 1 a.m. in a shopping mall in Monterrey, Mexico, after exiting a movie. That day we were pretty broke. I just had money for the movies, but not for the parking. Here in Mexico, all the public parking lots cost. So we decided to park the car behind the shopping mall on a back alley. When we were all out of the movie, the shopping mall access to the back alley was closed, so we had to walk our way up to there. When we were about to arrive at the car, a small kid, looking about ages 6 to 7, pulled my shirt from behind, asking for some spare change. This is something really common in Mexico. There are tons of beggars everywhere. So I said, "Sorry, kid, I'm broke. I have no spare change." The situation seemed kind of fishy, so I opened the car with the remote key and made signs to my wife to get in the car. The kid asked again. The whole time he was looking towards the ground. It was a really dark alley, so I wasn't able to see his face clearly. I was using my phone flashlight to look around, and that's when something makes my radar go crazy. I remember the hour, and I see on my watch it's 1:33 a.m. At Monterrey, no beggar kids are out at that time, especially in an alley like that, unless they're trying something sketchy, like robbing you or worse. Without looking back, I rushed to the car, placed the locks on it. While viewing the rearview mirror, I saw him staring directly at us. His eyes were like a void, a deep, dark black that made all of my body enter into a fight or flight stance. He had a smile so evil that it really got my heart racing. He ran next to my door and knocked on the glass while still staring directly at me, asking for money over and over again. He tried to open the door by pulling the handle relentlessly. As soon as he let go of the door handle, I turned on the car and made a run for our safety. The kid was running behind us, almost the same speed as the car, while screaming at us. Finally, we reached a highly transited avenue, and the kid was suddenly nowhere to be seen. Needless to say, my wife and I were scared shitless. From time to time, we drive by there at 1 to 3 a.m., trying to find that kid again. We have never seen him. My wife was there too, and she also saw the eyes of that kid, so I know I'm not crazy. Thanks for reading. Signed, Diego. Number 5. Dear Biker, this happened a few years ago now. It was actually November 3rd, 2020 election day. It was a little past midnight, and I had woken up to a banging sound on my door. My parents were out voting, and my sister was still asleep. I went downstairs quietly so I wouldn't wake my sister up. I had cameras, but I decided not to look at them. When I looked through the little peephole in the door, I could see children. They didn't look quite normal, though. The little boy, around 8 years old, had these weird shoes, an outfit like someone in the 40s would wear. The girl, around 6, didn't look any better. She had this haircut that a woman would wear in the 90s and an outfit that a woman might wear in the 70s. Besides that, they actually looked pretty normal. "Are you lost?" I asked them. "Our parents will be here soon," they both said weirdly in unison. "Do you need anything?" And they replied with a question, "Can we come in?" Right away, I knew something was off about these kids. Not just the fact that they were dressed weird, but the fact that their voices were off. They had voices that no 8 or 6-year-old should have. And suddenly I felt dizzy, and I knew that something really weird was with these kids. So I said, "If your parents are almost here, then can't you just wait out here on the porch?" I asked. It was a perfectly safe neighborhood, and not a robbery or anything had ever went on. I never even saw a shady person walk around here. "Can we come in?" They asked once more, but this time they weren't asking. They were starting to get really angry. "No, you can't," I yelled. I know this sounds bad that I'm saying that a little kid that's lost can't come in my house, but I'm telling you there was something off about these kids. That yell woke up my sister. She turned on the porch light, which helped me see that these kids had solid black eyes. I screamed and shut the door in their face. My sister asked what was going on, who was that, and why I yelled. I told her just to go to bed and not to worry about it, and she did as I asked. The kids eventually left, but they did some damage to my house when I shut the door. They ripped up some plants and they cracked the window, beating against it. Later that night, I did some research on them, and I found out that these black-eyed kids can only come into your house if they get permission. There is a slight chance that they will come back soon, and I'll be ready. When the kids left, they went into a black car with 2 tall dudes in solid black suits. Just remember, if you ever see a kid with black eyes and pale skin coming towards your house or car, don't let them in. Signed, Christopher. And there you have it. 5 true stories about encounters with black-eyed kids. So what do you think these things are? What do you think they want? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you have a story to share about something unexplained, just send it to the email in the description. And your story just might end up in a future episode. Anyway, thanks for watching, and until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, stay safe, and I'll be seeing you on down the road a ways. Biker, out.